Protest pandemonium, going from 0 to 100 in downtown Miami, moments after demonstrators defaced a statue, while others spray-painted the words George Floyd, BLM for Black Lives Matter, and the communist symbol. Police swarmed the area as 7 News cameras captured cops making numerous arrests. One man pushed to the pavement while another was hauled away in cuffs. That's when the chaos broke out as cops dressed in riot gear showed up and were face to face with furious and frustrated protesters.
Most living Americans have never seen scenes like that. Now they're common all over the country. What happened? Well, they tell us it's about police brutality, but police brutality has not increased. In fact, federal statistics show it's down. What's changed in many places is the nature of the prosecutors. The people whose job it is to keep you safe are instead making it easier for criminals to terrorize your family. That's not an accident. Left-wing megadonors like George Soros realized it's easier to install radical DAs than it is to convince the public to let their own cities burn. Soros has worked hard to elect district attorneys who will nullify laws against rioting and violence by failing to enforce them. In Portland, Oregon, where violence has become a way of life, a Soros-funded political action committee funneled $20,000 to Mike Schmidt's campaign this year. Schmidt, in turn, has announced he won't prosecute any of the rioters who've turned Portland into a war zone. He's already dismissed charges against rioting suspects, hundreds of them. In fact, at one point, Schmidt said the unrest in Portland was, quote, beautiful. But it's not just Portland. Entities bankrolled by George Soros have spent more than $13 million in district attorney races in a total of 17 states. Over the past few years, this unfolded in Florida, California, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia. In 2017, Soros spent roughly $1.7 million getting a single man elected, Larry Krasner, in Philadelphia. He's the district attorney. And as expected, Krasner presided over a dramatic rise in crime. Soros is now trying to do the same in Los Angeles. There's a DA race underway there now. The governor of Florida, though, stands apart, Ron DeSantis. He is against this trend, and for that reason, Florida is a very different state from the ones we just mentioned. DeSantis is now pushing for a law that would mandate very harsh sentences for people who riot. In Florida, under this proposed law, throwing projectiles at police officers would draw a mandatory 6-month jail sentence. Toppling statues and barricading roadways would be a felony. Ron DeSantis is standing apart from so many of our elected leaders, even Republicans, and so we wanted to talk to him tonight about what he is doing in the state of Florida. Governor, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're doing. So give us an
Happy
overview,
to do it, Tucker.
if you would, of this legislation that you're proposing and backing.
Yeah, a number of things. I mean, you mentioned increased penalties for people who are involved in these violent demonstrations, and that includes things like toppling statues, blocking roadways. We also have a provision that says any municipality that defunds the police, which is just an insane policy. It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. If you do that, the state government's going to defund you. We're not going to be sending you money if you're doing things like that. We also are concerned about watching Minnesota, what happened in Minneapolis, where the mayor just abdicated responsibility, had the police stand back. That gave these folks the ability to run amok. If that happens in Florida, we're waiving sovereign immunity. You can sue the local government for damages for anything that happens to you. And then, as you mentioned, with just letting people out, we revoke bail if you're arrested for one of these offenses. And then once you make your first appearance, the presumption is you don't get bail beyond that. Because what happens in Oregon, they go in, they get their mugshot taken, and then they're right back on the street doing the same thing. Well, how is that a deterrent?
Well, it's not. And this has gone on for more than 3.5 months since Memorial Day weekend. I'm not aware of any other governor who's suggested what you're suggesting. Why do you think that is? Why have people put up with this for so long?
I don't know, but I'll tell you, we've gotten a great response from this, Tucker. And part of it was we took action in Florida when all this was happening at the beginning of June. You know, I immediately brought up the National Guard. We have highway patrol strike teams that were there. We actually prevented them from taking over roads because we had things done. But I also thought to myself, okay, we handled it right. We had a lot of mayors, quite frankly, who did a really good job. But I'm like, do we really want to keep playing whack-a-mole? I mean, once somebody throws a brick at a police officer during one of these demonstrations, and then they have to go immediately to jail, they're going to stop. They're not going to do it. If they get away with it, they're going to continue to do it. So I think this is important. And I think, as you've mentioned on your show, and by the way, your intro was in fuego, it's almost like this rioting is like they're threatening to riot more. You're seeing more and more of this. well, okay, if this is something that's coming down the pike, we're going to say, not in Florida, it's not.
There's a reason people are moving there, and it's not just the low taxes and good weather. I agree completely. Has anybody on the other side come out against this yet? And if so, what's their argument against it?
Yeah, I mean, I think people reflexively on the far left have. I mean, I think that they just, they do the typical stuff that they do. I mean, some of the people on the far left, they are just anti-police. I mean, they do believe in defunding the police. And so when you have me standing in front of all these sheriffs and police chiefs saying, no, 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 you're not going to defund the police, we'll defund you. You're going to jail if you harm a police officer, really any citizen. And so they're basically caught in this position. But I think it's important. We want this done as soon as we can get it done. But we're in an election season. Everyone running for office in Florida in the House or Senate, they got to take a position on this now.
Yeah.
Are you for law enforcement, rule of law, or are you going to stand with the mob? I know where I stand.
And I think most people do, even Democrats. I mean, most people believe in order, of course. Governor DeSantis, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your explaining it to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.